My mother called Harvard, pretending I was a credit card thief to destroy my future, so I cut her off and built a life without her. Years later, she lost everything trying to destroy me again, and now she needs my help. My mom is the academic baddie of the family. She has 3 degrees and 1 PhD, all from Ivy Leagues. And whenever I won an academic award, she'd brag about it for weeks. Say it was all because of her. That was her thing. It was like she still wanted to hang on to her glory days. Well, I wasn't going to be the one to ruin that. So when she wanted all of my college application essays to go through her first, I let her. After all, she was the one to get my GPA up to 4.2. But then something strange happened. No college was accepting me. And I never received a single rejection email either. Instead, I got angry, sometimes even threatening ones, like Harvard, who said my essay was a disgrace, or Brown, who threatened to have me blacklisted from other schools. It was around this time that I started to notice a pattern. Every time I got rejected, she got this look in her eyes like she'd known all along, like she wanted it that way. But there was only one college I actually wanted to go to, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I never told my mom about it because it wasn't an Ivy League. Plus, I didn't want her to think I was a failure for not getting accepted into yet another college. But then something strange happened. I got an interview within just 2 weeks of applying. They told me I was exactly the kind of student they were looking for. And that evening, I couldn't help myself. I did the craziest thing known to mankind. I told my mother. And despite everything, I still expected her to jump up with excitement, or at least smile. But no. Instead, she just said, "That's wonderful, sweetie, but don't get too excited. You don't want to be disappointed." I stared at her blankly. It was the first time I asked myself whether my mom really wanted the best for me. But then I reminded myself about all the hours she had put into making me study, how my GPA was only high because of her. So I told myself the same thing she's always said to me, that I was being ungrateful. But after a week, I finally snapped, because my dream college told me I was the perfect candidate. But a week later, I got the email from UNC Charlotte. There it was, in plain red Arial font. Rejected. It was the nastiest email I had ever seen. Didn't even mention my grades, just talked about my poor character. But I wasn't confused. I knew that somehow my mom was behind it. So I stopped telling her anything. Found a tiny school 3 states away that she'd never heard of. Applied in secret. Got in. Packed my car the day after graduation and left while she was at her stupid book club. For the first few weeks, she called me every day. But I never picked up, because every time she would leave me a cute little voice recording. One was 5 minutes long where she described how much of an embarrassment I was to the family name. Another said I was sabotaging everything she had worked for. And, my favorite, that I was going to end up in a dead-end job at 30 and end up dying alone. Like, Mom, isn't that you? LOL. Anyway, I blocked her after that, and most of my family took my side. Fast forward 5 years, and I'm now a paralegal with an amazing salary and prospective job. I was in the middle of joking to my coworker about how we both thought we'd never get into college when she asked what my GPA was. 4.2. What? She exclaimed. How the EF did you struggle to get in? Before I could even respond, she picked up her phone and called her dad. My dad's a college admission officer. Sorry, but I need to know what happened. I just smiled. Daisy had always been a little quirky. Daddy, do you know a Zephyrine counter? My name. By this point, I was almost keeled over from how hard I was laughing, swatting the phone to try and get her to give up. But as soon as he responded, my body went still. From 2019 to Harvard, Daisy was smiling. I wasn't. Yes, Daddy, I knew your memory was still good. Why didn't she get accepted? She's the girl whose mother called. The entire staff was gossiping about it for months after. My heart dropped. After 4 years, I finally figured it out. My mom called saying I had been stealing her credit cards, and that I was unstable. She put on such a good act that they flagged my application immediately, and flagged my name in the shared database all colleges had access to. Rage boiled my blood. I knew I had to make her pay. After discovering the truth about her mother's sabotage, I started documenting everything. I created a timeline of every rejected application, every threatening email, every voice message she left on my phone. I spent hours going through old files, screenshots, and recordings. My hands shook as I organized them into folders on my laptop. I reached out to my former high school teachers who remembered my stellar academic record. Mrs. Henderson from AP Literature responded immediately, saying she always wondered why I hadn't gotten into any top schools. Mr. Rodriguez from Calculus was shocked when I told him what happened. They both agreed to write statements about my academic performance. Within days, my mother caught wind of what I was doing through extended family members. My cousin texted me that my mom was calling everyone, launching a full smear campaign against me. She told relatives I was mentally unstable and fabricating stories about her. She claimed I was having a breakdown and needed psychiatric help. Then things got worse. My mother created fake social media accounts and started harassing my employer. My boss pulled me aside one morning, looking concerned. Anonymous tips had been sent about my supposed criminal past and unstable behavior. Someone called claiming I forged my paralegal credentials. The accusations kept coming, each more outrageous than the last. I felt my world crumbling. Years of building my career, and my mother was trying to destroy it all over again. My boss said he didn't believe the claims, but HR had to investigate. I provided all my credentials, transcripts, and references. The investigation dragged on for weeks while I continued working under a cloud of suspicion. Just when I thought I'd lost everything, Daisy's father came through. He provided written testimony about my mother's calls to Harvard, detailing exactly what she'd said about me. Then something unexpected happened. Other admission officers started coming forward with similar stories. They remembered the unusual calls about me, the wild accusations that didn't match my stellar application. During this time, I made another shocking discovery. I decided to visit my childhood home while my mother was at work. Using my old key, I went to check the mail. What I found made my stomach turn. There were stacks of old mail in the garage, some dating back years, years. Scholarship offers from schools that never used the shared database. Acceptance letters from smaller colleges I'd applied to without telling her. She'd been intercepting my mail for years. I took photos of everything, my hands trembling with rage. How many opportunities had she stolen from me? How many doors had she closed? I gathered the evidence and left before she returned. My mother escalated her attacks. She filed false police reports claiming I was stalking her. The police showed up at my apartment, but security footage from my building proved I'd been 3 states away during the times she claimed I was harassing her. The officers apologized for the inconvenience, but I could see the frustration in their eyes. They knew she was wasting their time. The situation reached a breaking point when we were ordered to attend mediation for a restraining order hearing. My mother showed up looking perfectly composed, playing the victim. But during the session, she made a critical mistake. In her anger, she accidentally admitted on record to making the calls to colleges. She said she was protecting schools from her ungrateful daughter. The mediator's eyes widened. Everything was being recorded. That recording became crucial evidence. I sat in my car afterward, listening to it over and over. Finally, I had proof of what she'd done. Not just suspicions or circumstantial evidence, but her own words admitting to sabotaging my future. My aunt reached out to me after hearing about the mediation. She revealed something that shook me to my core. My mother had done the same thing to her own sister decades ago, sabotaging her med school applications out of jealousy. The pattern of behavior spanned generations. My aunt had always suspected but never had proof. Now she understood why her medical dreams had been crushed. Armed with all this evidence, I found a pro bono lawyer who specialized in family disputes. We built a case for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. My mother tried one last manipulation when she was served with the papers. She faked a heart condition, posting on social media about her fragile health and how the stress from her ungrateful daughter was unaliving her. But during the lawsuit, we subpoenaed her medical records. They revealed the lie. No heart condition, no health issues at all, just more manipulation, more lies to garner sympathy and paint herself as the victim. The court ruled in my favor. The judge ordered my mother to pay damages and issue formal retractions to every college she'd contacted. She had to write letters admitting what she'd done, clearing my name. The judgment was public record. Word spread through her university networks. The professor with 3 degrees and a PhD who sabotaged her own daughter's education. Her academic reputation crumbled. Colleagues distanced themselves. Speaking engagements were canceled. The book club she loved so much asked her not to return. With the settlement money, I established a scholarship fund for students whose parents sabotaged their education. I named it the Second Chance Scholarship. The first recipient was a young woman whose father had hidden her acceptance letters because he didn't want her to leave home. Reading her essay brought tears to my eyes. My mother faced the consequences of her actions alone. The family members she'd manipulated for years finally saw her true nature. They understood why I'd cut contact, why I'd fled 3 states away. Some apologized for not believing me sooner. I continued thriving in my career, eventually getting promoted to senior paralegal. My boss, who'd stood by me through the false accusations, became a mentor and friend. Daisy and I grew closer, bonding over our shared experience of overcoming family obstacles. The scholarship fund grew each year. Students would write to thank me, sharing their stories of overcoming parental sabotage. Some faced physical abuse for wanting education. Others dealt with emotional manipulation like mine. Each story reminded me why I'd transformed my pain into purpose. My mother tried reaching out through lawyers, through family, through social media, but I maintained my boundaries. The woman who'd tried to control my future no longer had power over me. She'd wanted me to fail, to need her, to never surpass her achievements. Instead, I'd built a life and legacy she could never touch. The scholarship fund's first anniversary gala was supposed to be a celebration. I'd rented a small conference room at the community center. Nothing fancy, just a place where recipients could share their stories and donors could meet the students they were helping. Daisy helped me set up folding chairs while her father arranged the refreshment table. 20 minutes before the event, my phone buzzed with a text from the building manager. The fire department had received an anonymous tip about safety violations in our reserved room. They'd shut down the entire wing for inspection. I knew immediately who was behind it, but proving it would be impossible. We scrambled to move everything to the parking lot. Recipients helped carry chairs while donors pitched in to set up tables under the streetlights. The outdoor setting actually made the event more intimate, more real. Students shared their stories under the stars, their voices carrying across the quiet evening air. My mother's next move came through my landlord. He called me on a Tuesday morning, his voice strained and uncomfortable. Someone had been calling him repeatedly, claiming I was running an illegal business from my apartment. They'd filed formal complaints with the housing board about noise violations, unauthorized visitors, and commercial activities in a residential unit. The accusations were ridiculous, but they triggered a mandatory inspection. I spent days organizing documentation to prove I worked from the office, not home. My neighbors provided statements confirming I was a quiet tenant. The housing inspector found nothing, of course, but the stress of defending myself against phantom accusations was exhausting. Work became another battlefield. Anonymous complaints flooded HR about my unprofessional conduct and questionable ethics. Each accusation required investigation, documentation, meetings. My boss remained supportive, but I could see the strain in his eyes. How long before the constant drama made me more trouble than I was worth? One morning, I arrived at work to find my desk drawer slightly open. Nothing seemed missing, but something felt wrong. I started documenting everything, taking photos of my workspace each night before leaving. Sure enough, 3 days later, confidential client files appeared on my desk that I'd never touched. Someone had placed them there overnight. Security footage mysteriously glitched during those exact hours. The IT department couldn't explain it. Without proof of tampering, I faced serious questions about why restricted documents were in my possession. Only my spotless record and my boss's trust kept me from suspension. Daisy noticed my increasing paranoia. She started walking me to my car after work, checking underneath and around it while I pretended to search for my keys. We developed a system of coded texts to confirm we'd each made it home safely. Her father quietly reached out to his contacts, warning them about potential false reports regarding my character. The psychological warfare intensified. I'd find my car tires deflated, not slashed, just empty of air. Subscriptions I'd never ordered arrived at my apartment. My mail would disappear for days, then reappear stuffed in my box all at once. Food deliveries I hadn't placed showed up at my door at odd hours. Each incident was too minor for police involvement, too subtle to trace, but the cumulative effect was maddening. I installed security cameras, changed my locks, varied my routines. I became hyper-vigilant, checking mirrors constantly, documenting everything, saving every receipt and timestamp. My mother's campaign expanded to social media. Fake profiles appeared on professional networking sites, using my name with slightly altered spellings. They posted inflammatory content, made inappropriate comments on industry forums, sent connection requests to my colleagues with bizarre messages. I spent hours filing reports, getting accounts removed, only for new ones to pop up days later. The scholarship fund became her primary target. She created copycat websites with similar names, redirecting potential donors to dead ends. She posted fake reviews claiming the fund was a scam, that I was pocketing donations. She contacted recipients' families, telling them their children were being exploited for my personal gain. One recipient's mother called me in tears. She'd received anonymous letters detailing my criminal history and mental instability. The letters included Photoshop documents that looked official enough to scare her. I spent hours on the phone, sharing the real court documents, explaining the situation, rebuilding trust that my mother had tried to shatter. My breaking point came when she targeted Mrs. Henderson. My former teacher called me, her voice shaking. Someone had reported her to the school board for inappropriate conduct related to writing my recommendation letter years ago. They'd accused her of accepting bribes, of falsifying my academic record, of conduct unbecoming an educator. Mrs. Henderson was 3 years from retirement. The investigation, though ultimately unfounded, cast a shadow over her spotless career. Watching this woman who'd believed in me face scrutiny because of my mother's vendetta was unbearable. I drove to her house with flowers and apologies, but she just hugged me and said she'd do it again in a heartbeat. The attacks on people who'd helped me continued. Mr. Rodriguez received calls at his home number, which was unlisted. The caller claimed to be a reporter investigating a grade-fixing scandal from years ago. Daisy's father got anonymous tips about his bias in college admissions, suggesting he'd shown favoritism to certain applicants. Each person stood by me, but I could see the toll it was taking. My support network was being systematically harassed, their lives disrupted because they dared to help me. The guilt was overwhelming. I'd escaped my mother's control, but she was punishing everyone who'd aided my freedom. I started keeping a detailed log of every incident, creating a massive spreadsheet with dates, times, descriptions, and any available evidence. The document grew to dozens of pages. Patterns emerged in the timing of attacks, usually coinciding with positive developments in my life or the scholarship fund's milestones. My cousin Sarah, who'd initially warned me about my mother's smear campaign, became an unexpected ally. She'd grown tired of being used as a messenger and started documenting my mother's calls. She recorded conversations where my mother detailed her plans to teach me a lesson and show me what happens when you disrespect family. Sarah's recordings revealed the depth of my mother's obsession. She spent hours each day planning new ways to disrupt my life. She'd recruited distant relatives to help, spinning tales of my ingratitude and instability. She'd even hired a private investigator to track my movements, though he'd quit after realizing he was being asked to facilitate harassment. The investigator, feeling guilty, reached out to me through Sarah. He provided copies of everything he'd gathered for my mother, including photos of my apartment building, my work schedule, and details about my daily routines. He also shared recordings of my mother's increasingly unhinged requests for him to plant evidence or create situations that would get me fired. Armed with this new evidence, I considered my options. Restraining orders had failed before. HR investigations cleared me, but cost me credibility. The police couldn't act on harassment that was so carefully orchestrated to avoid crossing legal lines. I needed a different approach. I decided to use my mother's tactics against her. I started documenting her life the way she'd documented mine. Public records showed she'd been struggling financially, spending beyond her means to maintain her image. Her university had quietly reduced her teaching load after complaints from students about her erratic behavior. Instead of attacking her directly, I simply started telling the truth. When people asked why I'd cut contact with my mother, I shared the court documents from our mediation. When donors questioned the legitimacy of my scholarship fund, I provided full financial transparency and audit reports. When colleagues received anonymous tips about me, I preemptively shared my entire history, including my mother's sabotage. Transparency became my weapon. I created a website detailing my story, including all the evidence I'd gathered. I posted the recording from mediation, where my mother admitted to sabotaging my college applications. I shared the testimonies from admission officers, the photos of intercepted mail, the court judgment in my favor. The website went viral within academic circles. Students who'd faced similar parental sabotage reached out with their own stories. The scholarship fund received a surge in donations from people who understood the unique pain of having your own parent try to destroy your future. Media outlets started requesting interviews, though I declined most of them. My mother's response was swift and vicious. She filed lawsuits claiming defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. But truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Every claim I'd made was backed by evidence. Her lawsuits were dismissed one by one, each dismissal adding to the public record of her behavior. She tried to turn the family against me completely, hosting gatherings where she'd sob about her ungrateful daughter who was destroying her life, but family members had started comparing notes. They realized how many lies she'd told, how she'd pitted relatives against each other, how she'd used them as weapons in her war against me. My aunt, the one whose medical dreams my mother had crushed decades ago, became my fiercest defender. She shared her own story publicly, revealing a pattern of sabotage that went back generations. She'd kept quiet for years out of family loyalty, but watching history repeat itself with me had broken her silence. Together, we discovered my mother had sabotaged other family members too. A cousin whose art school portfolio mysteriously went missing. A nephew whose job offer was rescinded after an anonymous tip about his character. Each revelation added another piece to the puzzle of my mother's pathological need to be the only successful one in the family. The scholarship fund's second anniversary approached amid this chaos. I was determined to make it bigger than the first, to show my mother that her attempts to destroy it had only made it stronger. We secured a proper venue this time, with ironclad contracts and backup plans for potential disruptions. A week before the event, I received an unexpected call. It was from a woman named Victoria Chen, a psychiatrist who specialized in narcissistic personality disorder. She'd been following my story and wanted to offer her services pro bono, not for therapy, but as an expert witness if I ever needed to demonstrate the psychological patterns behind my mother's behavior. Dr. Chen's analysis was illuminating. She explained how my academic success threatened my mother's identity as the family's intellectual superior. My independence challenged her need for control. Every attack was an attempt to force me back into a subordinate role, to prove she was still the smartest, most successful one. Understanding the psychology didn't excuse the behavior, but it helped me anticipate my mother's next moves. Dr. Chen predicted she'd escalate as the scholarship gala approached, trying to sabotage what had become a symbol of my success without her. She advised me to prepare for more personal attacks, possibly targeting my romantic relationships or trying to isolate me from my remaining support system. The prediction proved accurate. My mother started contacting anyone I dated in college, spinning stories about my instability and warning them to stay away from me. She reached out to professional contacts on social media, sending messages about my supposed vendetta against her. She even tried to infiltrate the scholarship fund's volunteer network, using fake names to sign up for positions that would give her access to donor information. Each attempt was caught and blocked, but the energy required to maintain constant vigilance was draining. I developed insomnia, jumping at every unexpected phone call, scrutinizing every new email for signs of another attack. Daisy started spending evenings at my apartment, partly for company and partly as a witness to any incidents that might occur. 3 days before the gala, my mother played what she thought was her trump card. She contacted the IRS, reporting the scholarship fund for tax fraud. She claimed I was embezzling donations and hiding income. The accusation triggered an automatic review that threatened to freeze the fund's accounts right before our biggest event. But I'd been meticulous about financial records from day one, partly from natural caution, and partly from paranoia about giving my mother any ammunition. Every donation was documented, every expense recorded, every tax form filed perfectly. The fund's accountant, a volunteer who'd been moved by our mission, worked around the clock to provide the IRS with everything they needed. The review cleared us within 48 hours, faster than normal because our records were so comprehensive. The IRS agent even commended our transparency. But the stress of potentially canceling the gala, of disappointing recipients who'd traveled to attend, of letting my mother win, had pushed me to my limit. I sat in my car outside the venue the night before the gala, exhausted and defeated. 5 years of fighting, of defending myself against someone who should have been my biggest supporter. The weight of it all crashed down on me. I called Daisy, sobbing, ready to give up. She arrived within minutes, bringing Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Rodriguez with her. They'd been setting up for the gala when she'd called them. Together, they reminded me why I'd started the fund. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to my mother, but to help students who'd faced similar sabotage. Giving up now would let down all the young people who'd found hope in my story. The gala morning arrived with another crisis. My mother had contacted the venue claiming there was a bomb threat. The building went into lockdown while police swept every room. We stood in the parking lot watching K9 units circle the building, knowing exactly who'd made the call but unable to prove it. The all clear came 2 hours before the event. We rushed to set up, recipients and donors working together to transform the space. My mother's attempt to ruin the day had actually brought everyone closer. A donor who owned a catering company sent trucks of food when he heard what happened. A recipient's mother, a florist, arrived with arrangements she'd made overnight. During setup, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was a reporter from the local news station. They'd received a tip about financial irregularities in my scholarship fund. My mother had sent them fabricated documents showing money transfers to offshore accounts. The reporter wanted my comment before running the story. I invited him to the gala, told him to bring his cameras, interview recipients, review our financial records. Transparency had become my default response to every attack. He arrived skeptical, but left with a completely different story than he'd planned to run. The event proceeded without major disruption, though I noticed unfamiliar faces taking photos and making notes. Private investigators, I assumed, hired by my mother to find something, anything she could use against me. I made sure they had clear views of our donation records displayed on the walls, the thank you letters from recipients, the audit reports available for anyone to review. That night, Sarah called with urgent news. She'd been at my mother's house when the investigators reported back. They'd found nothing irregular, but my mother had exploded in rage. She'd thrown objects, screamed about ungrateful children, and revealed her next plan. She was going to contact my biological father. I hadn't seen him since I was 3. My mother had driven him away with her controlling behavior, then spent years telling me he'd abandoned us. Now she planned to track him down, spin some story to turn him against me too. The thought thought of her dragging him into this mess after decades made my stomach churn, but I was done being reactive. That night, I hired my own investigator to find my father first. Within a week, he'd located him living 2 states over. He'd remarried, had other children, built a quiet life. The investigator made contact, explained the situation, warned him about potential calls from my mother. My father's response surprised me. He wanted to meet. He'd tried to maintain contact when I was young, but my mother had threatened him with false accusations if he didn't disappear. He'd kept newspaper clippings of my academic achievements, followed my career from afar. He'd been proud of me all along. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. He brought photos, letters he'd written but never sent, birthday cards he'd bought every year. He told me about his attempts to pay child support that my mother had refused, not wanting to give him any claim to visitation. He'd saved it all in an account he'd planned to give me someday. My mother discovered our meeting through social media. Someone had tagged us in a photo at the coffee shop. Her rage reached new heights. She called my father's employer, his wife, his children, spreading lies about his past. She filed a restraining order against him, claiming he was stalking her, despite living states away. But my father had learned from his past experience with her. He'd documented everything, recorded her calls, saved her messages. His wife, a lawyer, helped him file countercharges for harassment. His children, now adults, publicly defended him and called out my mother's lies. The family divide deepened. Relatives who'd stayed neutral finally chose sides. My grandmother, who'd always enabled my mother's behavior, finally admitted she'd created a monster. She revealed that my mother had been like this since childhood, sabotaging siblings, manipulating parents, always needing to be the best at everyone else's expense. My mother's university finally took action. The negative publicity, the documented harassment, the court records, all became too much to ignore. They offered her early retirement with a modest package if she'd leave quietly. She refused, demanding a full pension and threatening to sue for discrimination. The university's response was swift. They'd documented years of complaints from students about her erratic behavior, her tendency to favor certain students while sabotaging others who threatened her intellectual superiority. They had records of her using university resources to research and harass me. They gave her a choice: retire quietly or face termination with cause. She chose to fight. The hearings were public. Students came forward with stories of her vindictive grading, her manipulation, her attempts to sabotage their graduate school applications if they outperformed her favorites. The pattern was clear. She'd been doing to students what she'd done to me. During this time, the scholarship fund thrived. We'd helped dozens of students escape abusive family situations to pursue education. The media coverage, despite my mother's attempts to make it negative, had only increased donations. Corporate sponsors reached out, wanting to support our mission. I was reviewing applications one evening when my apartment building's fire alarm went off. We evacuated to the parking lot where firefighters found smoke bombs in the stairwell. No real fire, just enough smoke to force evacuation. Security footage showed a figure in dark clothing, face covered, but the build and gait were familiar. The next morning, police arrested my mother for false fire reporting and creating a public disturbance. A neighbor's dash cam had caught her license plate leaving the scene. She'd finally crossed a clear legal line. The judge, reviewing her history of false reports and harassment, set bail high and ordered her to stay away from me and my residence. She violated the order within days. I came home to find her in my apartment building's lobby, telling anyone who'd listen that I was mentally ill and needed help. Security called police while keeping her contained. She was arrested again, this time held without bail pending trial. Her lawyer, a family friend who'd known us for years, tried to negotiate a plea deal. He approached me privately, exhausted by her refusal to accept responsibility. He'd seen the evidence, knew she was guilty, but she insisted on going to trial, convinced she could make a jury see her as the victim. The trial date approached. I dreaded it, but knew it was necessary. My support system rallied around me. Daisy took time off work to attend every day. Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Rodriguez came as character witnesses. My father flew in with his family. Recipients from the scholarship fund filled the gallery. My mother took the stand and destroyed herself. She couldn't help but reveal her true nature. She ranted about my ingratitude, how I'd destroyed her life by succeeding without her. She admitted to the college calls but insisted she was protecting schools from an unstable child. She claimed the scholarship fund was created to humiliate her. The prosecutor barely had to work. My mother's narcissism was on full display. She contradicted herself, admitted to crimes while justifying them, showed no remorse. The jury saw through her victim act. They found her guilty on all counts: harassment, false reporting, breaking and entering, violation of restraining orders. Sentencing brought a moment of clarity. The judge reviewed her pattern of behavior, the impact on my life, the resources wasted on false reports. He sentenced her to 2 years in prison with mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. She'd serve at least 8 months before being eligible for parole. As court officers led her away, she turned to me one last time. For a moment, I saw something in her eyes, maybe regret, maybe just defeat. Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar rage. She screamed that I'd regret this, that I was nothing without her, that I'd destroyed our family. The courtroom cleared slowly. Supporters hugged me, saying justice had been served, but I felt hollow. This wasn't victory. It was just the end of a long, painful chapter. My mother would serve her time, but she'd never understand what she'd done wrong. In her mind, she'd always be the victim. Life moved forward. The scholarship fund incorporated as a proper nonprofit. We hired staff, opened a real office, expanded our reach. My father and I built a cautious relationship, making up for lost time while acknowledging we couldn't recover what was stolen from us. My mother's release date approached faster than expected. Good behavior, they said, though I suspected she'd simply learned to hide her nature better. Her lawyer contacted me about her living arrangements. She'd lost her house paying legal fees. Her university pension was modest. She needed help. I set up a trust through my lawyer. It would pay for a small apartment apartment and basic expenses, but she'd have no access to the principal and no contact with me. It was more than she deserved, but what I needed to do for my own peace of mind. I wouldn't become her. She sent one letter through her lawyer after getting out. It was short, formal, nothing like her usual style. She thanked me for the financial help and promised to respect my boundaries. She mentioned attending therapy, working on understanding her behavior. I didn't respond. Reports came through family occasionally. She'd joined a support group, volunteered at a library, kept to herself. Some relatives tried to reconcile us, but I held firm. Forgiveness didn't require renewed contact. I could wish her well from a distance while protecting the life I'd built. The Scholarship Fund's 5th anniversary gala was our biggest yet. Hundreds attended, including many recipients who'd graduated and now donated back. My father gave a speech about resilience and the importance of breaking cycles. Mrs. Henderson announced a teaching scholarship in her name. That night, I stood on the venue's balcony looking out at the city lights. Daisy joined me, along with several recipients who'd become like family. We'd all survived something that should have broken us. We'd transformed pain into purpose, isolation into community. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then recognized the area code from my childhood. It was brief. Saw the gala coverage. You did good. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it and turned off my phone. The next morning brought new applications, new stories of parental sabotage and educational dreams. I reviewed them with my team, remembering my own journey with each one. We selected 20 new recipients, each getting not just financial support but mentorship and community. My life had found rhythm. Work fulfilled me. The fund gave me purpose, and I'd built a chosen family of survivors and supporters. Romance came eventually, with someone who understood my boundaries and history. We took things slowly, building trust through actions, not words. I kept the website with my story active, updating it occasionally. Students worldwide reached out, sharing how it helped them recognize their own toxic situations. Some escaped, some endured until they could leave, some reconciled with changed parents. Each path was valid. The old rage rarely surfaced anymore. When it did, I channeled it into advocacy, pushing for better university policies about parental interference, working with counselors to recognize sabotage patterns. The girl who'd fled in secret had become a woman who helped others find their own escapes. My mother kept her distance as promised. Whether from genuine change or legal fear, I didn't know or need to know. Her absence had become normal, her influence on my daily life finally minimal. The space she'd consumed with chaos had filled with purpose and peace. I graduated from law school at 30, something made possible by the stability I'd fought to build. My father attended, along with the extended family I'd chosen. The girl with a 4.2 GPA who couldn't get into college now had her law degree from a respected school. The Scholarship Fund evolved into a full advocacy organization. We published resources, lobbied for policy changes, created support networks. What started as transformation of personal pain had become a movement helping thousands recognize and escape educational sabotage. My story became a case study in psychology programs, examining narcissistic abuse and family dynamics. Dr. Chen co-authored papers with me about recognizing parental sabotage patterns. We developed screening tools for counselors and admission officers to identify suspicious interference. Years later, I received word that my mother had passed. A heart attack. Sudden, but not entirely unexpected given her lifestyle. I attended the funeral from the back, leaving before the reception. Some family members understood, others judged. I'd made peace with both reactions long ago. She'd left me everything in her will, to everyone's surprise. The house, her remaining assets, even her academic papers. I donated it all to the fund, using the house as a transitional shelter for students escaping abusive situations. Her legacy became supporting those she would have sabotaged. I often think about the girl who discovered her mother's betrayal in a coworker's office. She couldn't have imagined where that revelation would lead. The pain had been real, the journey difficult, but the outcome had meaning beyond personal vindication. The fund now operates nationally, with chapters in 12 states. We've helped over 1,000 students, some escaping situations far worse than mine. Each success story validates the pain of the journey. Each grateful message reminds me why I chose transformation over bitterness. My office walls display photos from graduations, weddings, achievements of those we've helped. Mixed among them are pictures with my chosen family, my father, the mentors who believed in me. The wall tells a story of resilience, community, and the family we create when blood fails us. Sometimes new recipients ask how I moved past the anger. I tell them I didn't, not entirely. I just learned to point it somewhere useful. The rage that once consumed me now fuels a program that changes lives. My mother tried to destroy my future. Instead, she inadvertently created hundreds of better ones.